Pushpin disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life emotional themes. While it reflects true-to-life struggles such as infidelity, family dynamics, and emotional trauma, the characters and events are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The story is written for entertainment and awareness purposes only, and it is not intended to promote or justify any unethical behavior. It was a Thursday evening when the silence in the house began to feel different. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of emptiness that creeps in when something important is missing. My husband, Daniel, had left early that morning for a 2-day business trip in Chicago. It wasn't unusual. He traveled often, sometimes too often, but I'd grown used to it over the years. Our son, Aiden, was upstairs in his room, headphones on, likely watching a YouTube video or playing one of those games I could never keep up with. He had just turned 16 last month, and while he had started keeping more to himself, he was still my sweet, observant boy. I stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta that only 2 of us would eat tonight. It was strange, really, how the smallest changes in a routine could make you feel so unsettled. Daniel had been distant lately. Less texting. Shorter phone calls. And the way he looked at me, or didn't, had changed. But I kept telling myself, he's just tired. Work is stressful. It's normal. Still, as I set the table for 2, my mind wandered to all the times he'd seemed too busy, too distracted. I shook the thoughts away. Doubting him made me feel guilty, like I was betraying the trust we'd built over 17 years of marriage. As I looked around for my phone to check the time, I noticed Daniel's tablet sitting on the kitchen counter. It was open, screen glowing. Probably forgot to pack it. He often used it for presentations. Out of instinct, I tapped the screen to see if I could find a recipe I'd once saved on it. That's when it happened. A message popped up. "Can't wait to see you again tonight, red heart." My hand froze over the screen. I stared at it, breath caught in my throat. The sender's name, Celia, someone I had never heard Daniel mention. My stomach dropped. My first thought was denial. Maybe it was a spam message. Maybe it was someone else's device. But it wasn't. This was his tablet. His messages. I felt dizzy. Before I could even fully process what I had seen, I heard footsteps. Aiden entered the kitchen, yawning, his hair tousled. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, noticing the pale look on my face. I couldn't speak. My fingers still hovered over the glowing screen. I felt like I'd just unlocked a door I was never meant to open. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my marriage began to unravel. I stared at the screen like it might disappear if I blinked hard enough. "Can't wait to see you again tonight, red heart, Celia." Who was she? My heart was thudding so loudly I could barely hear Aiden's voice calling again. "Mom? What's wrong?" I quickly pressed the power button on the tablet. The message vanished into darkness, but the weight of it clung to the air like smoke. It's nothing," I stammered, trying to force a smile. I thought I saw something." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't look okay." I looked at him for a long second. He wasn't a little boy anymore. His eyes were sharp, his instincts sharper. I wanted to protect him from this. From the truth. From the ache blooming in my chest. But he saw right through me. He stepped forward, his voice low. "Was it about Dad?" I blinked. "What?" Aiden hesitated. "I saw you looking at his tablet." A cold silence passed between us. He knew something. I could feel it. He shifted uncomfortably and sat at the kitchen table, his fingers drumming lightly on the surface. He didn't look at me when he spoke again. "Mom. I think we need to talk." I sat down across from him, my legs suddenly weak. "Aiden, if you know something, please, tell me." He took a deep breath. "You're not crazy. I've been wondering when you'd find out." I saw him messaging someone. A woman. I didn't mean to snoop, but one night when he was driving me to practice, his phone was on the dash and a message popped up. She called him baby. I covered my mouth with my hand. Tears threatened to spill, but I fought them back. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to hurt you, he said, his voice cracking. And I didn't know what it really meant. Maybe it was just flirting, or maybe I was wrong. The honesty in his face broke me. He had been carrying this alone. Trying to protect me, when it should have been the other way around. Do you remember her name? I asked softly. He nodded. Celia. I saw it more than once. It was like time folded in on itself. Celia. That name again. That message on the tablet wasn't the first. It was just the first one I saw. My son, my child, had seen it before me. I'm so sorry, Mom, Aiden whispered. I reached across the table and held his hand. No, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to deal with this alone. We sat there in silence. The pasta had gone cold. The house, so quiet just minutes ago, now felt like it was vibrating with the sound of truth. Some doors, once opened, can never be shut again. The hours after our conversation passed like a slow-moving storm, heavy, tense, and silent. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the name Celia flashed like a neon warning sign behind my lids. Aiden had gone back to his room after dinner, clearly trying to give me space, but the silence between us was no longer the kind that made me feel alone, it was the kind that made me feel seen. He knew the truth. And he hadn't run from it. That mattered more than I could say. By morning, I found him already downstairs, pouring cereal like nothing had happened. But I could see it in his eyes, he'd been waiting for me to come down. Hey, I said gently, walking into the kitchen. Hey. He didn't look up. I sat beside him at the table, unsure how to begin. Eventually, I just said it, I need to know everything. Aiden nodded. He didn't flinch. He had made his decision. Okay, he said quietly. He pushed his cereal bowl aside and folded his hands like an adult preparing to deliver bad news. A few weeks ago, Dad said he was working late. He dropped me off at Max's house for a group project, but I forgot my charger. So, Max's mom drove me home about an hour later. He paused. When we got there, Dad's car wasn't in the driveway. But I saw him parked down the street, near the old pharmacy. I thought maybe he was just talking on the phone. But then I saw him get out. And this woman, she came out of a car and hugged him. Like, really hugged him. I bit my lip, trying not to cry. And you were sure it was him? Yeah, Aiden nodded firmly. I watched him walk with her into the hotel next to the pharmacy. The Redwood Inn. I waited to see if he came right back out, but he didn't. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. The Redwood Inn was a cheap roadside hotel. Not exactly a place for business meetings. Why didn't you tell me right then? I asked, barely above a whisper. Because I didn't want to break everything. I thought maybe I was wrong, or maybe it was something else. But then I saw the messages again on his phone. The name, Celia, and that heart emoji. It was the same woman, I'm sure of it. I reached over and hugged him, tightly. He held on to me just as fiercely. You shouldn't have had to go through that alone, I whispered. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to hurt you, but I think he already has. Those words pierced deeper than anything else. My son, my brave, observant son, had carried a truth that I hadn't had the courage to even suspect. And in doing so, he had become the person I could lean on, the one who reminded me that love doesn't lie. That trust isn't blind. And that sometimes, the truth doesn't just hurt, it heals. After Aiden's confession, something inside me shifted. It was like a dam had broken, and suddenly, all the things I had ignored or excused for months came flooding back. The late nights, the sudden business trips, the way Daniel flinched when I asked to borrow his phone. None of it was coincidence. I had been too afraid to face it, but now I couldn't pretend anymore. Later that evening, when Aiden was upstairs doing homework, I sat alone in the living room with Daniel's tablet on my lap. It was still logged in. My hands trembled as I opened the messaging app again. Part of me hoped the earlier message had been a mistake, a wrong contact, a misread sentence. But deep down, I knew better. The chat with Celia was right at the top. My stomach turned as I scrolled. There were dozens of messages, going back weeks, maybe months. Last night was amazing. I miss your hands on me. When will you leave her? You always say soon. I'm tired of being the secret. Each message cut deeper than the last. Photos followed. Selfies, taken in hotel rooms, restaurants, even the back seat of a car I recognized as my car. The smile Daniel wore in those pictures, it was the smile I hadn't seen in years. Not directed at me, anyway. I felt sick. In the corner of the app, a folder labeled Shared Media caught my eye. I clicked it. Receipts. Booking confirmations. One stood out, Redwood Inn, room 213. Date, last Tuesday. Exactly the night Aiden had seen them together. I stared at the screen, numb. It wasn't just an affair. It was a life he had been building behind my back. A parallel world, complete with passion, planning, and lies. The clock ticked loudly in the background. Each second that passed felt like a heartbeat wasted on a man I no longer recognized. Aiden came down briefly to grab a snack, and I quickly shut the tablet. I wasn't ready to tell him what I had found. Not yet. He had already carried enough. That night, after he went to bed, I opened Daniel's email account. Passwords came easy. I had known him long enough to guess the usual ones. There, too, was more evidence. Plane tickets to cities he'd never mentioned, receipts for flowers, dinner reservations for two, always signed off with, "Can't wait to see you again, my Celia." I scrolled until I couldn't anymore. My heart couldn't take it. But one thing was now crystal clear. This wasn't a fling. This was betrayal with intention. My hands were cold, but my resolve was warm. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew this, the truth was no longer hidden. It was in my hands. And this time, I wouldn't look away. The next morning, the house was still and quiet, but inside me, a storm was building. I barely slept, not out of grief, but because of the clarity that had finally settled over me. My marriage wasn't just strained, it was broken. And now, I needed to know exactly how deep the damage ran. With Daniel still away on his so-called business trip, I took the time to gather everything. No more guessing. No more hoping. I needed the full picture, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared of the truth. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop, the tablet, and a notebook. I opened his email again. The inbox was full of careful arrangements, all worded just enough to sound professional, if you weren't looking closely. But I was. There were receipts for hotels, flights, even gifts, expensive ones. A necklace from a boutique jeweler. A weekend getaway to Napa Valley, supposedly during a conference he had asked me not to attend with him. I dug further, searching through old calendar entries he never thought to delete. Meetings that didn't exist, events that never happened. I cross-checked them with photos from our shared cloud account. That's when I found them, a picture of Daniel and Celia standing together in a hotel room mirror, her arms wrapped around his waist. The date stamp matched the same weekend he claimed he was visiting his parents. It was like watching someone else's life, except it was mine. My husband. My home. My story. Only I was written out of it. I printed what I could, screenshots, emails, booking confirmations. Not out of spite, but preparation. I needed proof, not just for myself, but for what was coming. That evening, Aiden found me at the dining table, surrounded by papers and with tired eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked up at him, my brave boy, standing there with concern written all over his face. I gave him a tired smile. I found everything, I said. You were right. He sat down slowly, watching me. What are you going to do? I paused. That was the question, wasn't it? I wasn't ready to say it out loud, not yet. But I knew what I had to do. I'm not going to pretend anymore, I said. And I won't let him lie to us one more time. Aiden reached across the table and touched my hand. I'll be right here when you do. I nodded, holding back tears. I know. For years, I thought I had to hold this family together by hiding my pain, swallowing doubts, and making excuses. But now, I realized, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let go. And soon, Daniel would come home. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Daniel came home late Sunday evening, suitcase in hand and a smile that looked rehearsed. He walked through the front door like everything was normal, as if our lives hadn't quietly unraveled behind him. Hey, he called out, dropping his keys into the bowl near the entryway. Missed you. I stood in the living room, heart pounding, with Aiden just a few feet behind me. The lights were dim, but the truth was blinding. He noticed the stack of papers on the coffee table. The tension in his face shifted, just barely. A slight pause in his step. He knew something was wrong. What's all this? He asked, feigning confusion. I didn't move. You tell me. He looked down. His eyes scanned the papers, screenshots of messages, booking confirmations, photos. His own words staring back at him. His mouth opened, then closed. Where did you get this? He asked, voice low. It doesn't matter where. What matters is that it's yours. My voice was steady. I had rehearsed this moment in my head for days. All of it. I know everything, Daniel. His face flushed. This isn't what you think, don't, I said sharply. Don't lie. Not to me. Not to your son. Aiden stepped forward. I saw you, he said. His voice was quiet, but there was a steel edge in it. I saw you with her. At the Redwood Inn. Weeks ago. Daniel's eyes darted from me to Aiden. He looked like a man slowly realizing the ground beneath him had already crumbled. He started, then stopped again. Finally, the mask dropped. He exhaled, defeated. Okay. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. A mistake? I echoed bitterly. You don't accidentally cheat for months. You don't accidentally take another woman on vacations while your family waits at home. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he muttered. You didn't mean to get caught, Aiden snapped. You cheated on both of us. Not just Mom. Those words silenced the room. Daniel looked at Aiden, his expression breaking for the first time. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did, Aiden said, eyes glassy. And you lied. Over and over. I stepped between them. This family deserved honesty. We deserved loyalty. And you gave it to someone else. He reached out, desperate. Please. I can fix this. We can go to counseling. I shook my head. I'm not interested in fixing what you worked so hard to break. He stood frozen as I turned away, and Aiden followed me down the hall. Behind us, Daniel didn't say a word. Maybe he knew there was nothing left to say. The confrontation hadn't given me peace, but it had given me power, the power of truth, and the strength to no longer deny it. The man who walked into our house that evening wasn't the same man I had married. And now, neither was I. The morning after the confrontation, the house was quieter than ever. No footsteps, no routine humming from Daniel's mouth as he made coffee, no background TV. Just the soft ticking of the wall clock, and the ringing in my ears from the night before. Daniel had left early. No apology note. No grand gesture. Just silence. I made breakfast, more out of habit than hunger, and set a plate for Aiden. He came down, hair messy, eyes puffy. He didn't speak for a moment, just sat and pushed scrambled eggs around with his fork. "Did he say anything to you before he left?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "I heard the door close around 6. That's it." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I wanted to believe that even after everything, Daniel might try to explain himself. To his son. To me. But no, he chose escape. Again. "I don't think he's coming back," Aiden said quietly. I looked at him. "Would you want him to?" He paused. His answer wasn't immediate. "Not like this. Not unless he was really sorry. And not just sorry he got caught." That honesty, that clarity, in my teenage son broke something in me. And built something else. "I don't know what's going to happen next," I admitted. "But I'm done pretending everything's okay." He nodded. "Me too." Later that day, I packed a few of Daniel's things, not out of spite, but closure. I placed the man I used to love into a box. His cologne still lingered on one of his sweaters. I pressed it to my face for a second, remembering. Then I let it go. Trust doesn't die in one blow. It erodes, slowly, until the foundation crumbles. Daniel didn't just cheat on me with another woman, he cheated on the life we built, the values we taught our son, the promises made in whispers when no one else was listening. And worse, he shattered the security my son once felt. That afternoon, I got a call from Daniel. I stared at the phone vibrating on the table. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned to Aiden. "Want to go out? Just us?" He looked surprised. "Yeah. I'd like that." We went to the lake where we used to have picnics when he was younger. We brought sandwiches, his favorite chips, and just sat, watching the water ripple. After a while, he said, "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe. For me. Not for him." He nodded slowly. "I think I could, someday. But not yet." We sat there, side by side, letting the breeze carry away the pieces of what we'd lost, and what we were slowly beginning to rebuild. Trust had been broken. But love? The real kind, the kind between a mother and son, that had only grown stronger. Weeks passed. The days began to string together like beads, each one a little lighter, a little less heavy with betrayal. Daniel called a few more times. I never picked up. He texted once, asking to talk things through and figure out a way forward. There was no mention of Celia. No admission of what he'd done. Only fear of losing the comfort he had once taken for granted. But by then, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going back. I met with a lawyer. Quietly. Calmly. I didn't want revenge, I wanted release. Freedom. I filed the papers on a rainy Tuesday morning, the sky gray but my heart clear. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like an unclenching, like I could finally breathe. Aiden noticed the shift in me. "You seem different," he said one evening, as we folded laundry together. "I think I'm finally myself again," I replied, smiling. He nodded. "I like this version of you." We started doing things we hadn't done in a long time. Little things. Cooking dinner together without rushing. Watching movies with popcorn and too many pillows. Laughing at dumb jokes. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was enough. One Saturday, we painted the living room a soft, pale blue. The old beige walls, the ones Daniel had always said were fine as is, felt like a relic of the past. Aiden picked the color. He said it felt open and honest. That felt right. He started drawing again. He had always loved sketching when he was younger, but somewhere along the way, it got lost in the fog of tension that had clouded our home. Now, his notebooks were filled again, with landscapes, comic characters, even a portrait of us on the porch swing. I cried when I saw it, and he pretended not to notice. As for Daniel, the divorce was quiet. Civil, he signed the papers with barely a word. I think he knew he had lost more than just a marriage. He had lost our trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't come back with signatures or sorries. One evening, Aiden and I sat out on the back deck, watching the sun set behind the trees. "I'm proud of you," he said suddenly. I turned to him, surprised. "Me?" "Yeah. For not letting him ruin you. For standing up." Tears welled up in my eyes, but this time, they weren't from pain. They were from pride. My son, my beautiful, brave son, had seen me through the storm. And somehow, we had both come out stronger. "You saved me," I said. He smiled. "You saved yourself. I just stood beside you." The sky turned from gold to lavender, and the future, for the first time in a long time, felt wide open. We had been broken. But we weren't defeated. This wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new one. Together. 10.